That night, I didn't yell. I took off my apron, carefully hung it back on the hook, wiped my hands on the dish towel, and went to get my overnight bag. In the kitchen, my husband was standing on a step stool, reorganizing our life under his mother's supervision. "Mark, these cabinets need to be higher," Nancy, my mother-in-law, was directing. "You're tall. This looks like some college dorm." I had barely stepped over the threshold, and she was already complaining. Or rather, continuing. She was always continuing. "Hey, Mark," I said. "Welcome back." "Yeah," he grunted without looking at me. "Hand me those screws, in that jar on the table." So that was it. My husband had been gone on a business trip for 3 days, and the only thing he needed from me was a jar of screws. "Good evening, Nancy," I said politely. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," she answered. "Some people only care about dancing at work parties. Nothing else in life matters." "It was a company party. You knew about it," I reminded her calmly. "And yes, I dance sometimes. It's not a funeral." "You should worry less about your personal life and more about this house," she sniffed. "Mark's kitchen looks like some frat house. I took charge for you and started putting things in order." Mark pretended not to hear. He has this superpower where he mutes reality whenever 2 women are figuring out who actually runs the house. "Mark, we didn't talk about redoing the kitchen," I said, leaning on the doorway. "Do you want us to talk through the changes? Maybe not the first night you're back from a trip." "Vicky, please don't start," he said tiredly. "Let me just finish. The sooner I move these cabinets, the sooner we can eat." "A mother is the only one who truly knows what her child needs," Nancy cut in. "My poor baby is exhausted after work. He can't think about this. And you're always off at parties." Classic. I'd seen this scene 100 times already, only the furniture changed. "Mark," I tried one last time, "do you really need a brand new kitchen tonight?" He didn't answer. Bad sign. When Mark went quiet, it meant his mom had already made the decision for him. "Well, if you're busy, I won't get in the way," I said, and turned around. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't say, "I'm leaving you." I just went to the bedroom, pulled out the big blue duffel bag I usually packed for vacations, and started putting my life into it. Jeans, a couple of dresses, underwear, my laptop, charger, hairbrush, documents. It took about 10 minutes. In that time, no one even poked their head in to ask, "What are you doing?" They were too busy fighting the cabinets. When I walked back through the kitchen, Nancy was standing triumphant by the wall. Mark was tightening a bracket. "Vicky, can you pass me?" he started, then stopped when he saw the bag. "No, Mark, you'll manage," I said, opened the front door. "Enjoy your remodel," and walked out. The hallway was quiet. I went down the stairs to the first floor, ordered a rideshare to my mom's place, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something like relief crawling out of my chest. Not freedom. Not yet. First came the explaining. To myself. Honestly, it would probably make more sense to start with how I ended up married to a man whose only request from me that night was a jar of screws. But let me give you the short version. My name is Vicky. I'm 32. I grew up in a small American town, in a 1-bedroom apartment where we had 1 bedroom, 1 old couch, and 1 very philosophical cat named Whiskers. In that apartment lived my mom Linda, kind to the point of self-harm, my grandma Gail, who hit 60 and suddenly fell in love with swing dancing and never apologized for it again, my younger sister Megan, our resident live-in commentator, and me, a chronic good girl. We supposedly had a father somewhere out there. Technically, he existed, but in our home he didn't exist at all. Not in the photo box, not in conversations. Mom never bad-mouthed him. Quite the opposite. When I got older, she explained it in this very grown-up voice. He was a good man, Vicky. We just weren't good together. It's not always someone being cruel. Sometimes people just make a mistake. Honestly, They could have printed that sentence on my forehead. I used it against myself for years. I met Mark at work. I'd just graduated college and started as a junior analyst at a small company where they penny pinch everything but always make payroll on time. Mark was a senior financial analyst there. Tall, polite, a little stiff, always holding a mug of coffee and wearing clean spreadsheets in Excel. Next to our office clowns, he looked like the only actual adult in the building. We started talking because I misentered a number once, and he came to my office with a printout and a smile.
"It's okay, Vicky. Everybody makes mistakes,"
he said. And he really meant it. No sarcasm. 6 months later, we were having lunch together every day. A year later, he proposed. The whole thing looked like a mid-budget rom-com. Restaurant, ring, champagne, clapping at neighboring tables. Mark wasn't the problem, his mom was. I met Nancy the night Mark brought me home to meet the family. Her house was exactly the way she liked it. Flawless carpet with not a single pet hair, coasters under every cup, emergency baked goods, just in case guests drop by, and her favorite role, suffering yet strong matriarch. "Oh God, I'm probably underdressed," I whispered to Mark while he was unlocking the door.
"My mom's fine,"
he said.
"Just a little anxious."
"Sure." "So, you're the famous Vicky," Nancy drawled, giving me a head-to-toe look like she was inspecting a clearance rack. "Well, come in." She didn't offer to take my shoes. In fact, she would have been offended. "We're not savages," she later explained. I didn't know yet that that kind of comment was her default setting. A week later, Nancy came to our place to meet my family. We were still in that same tiny apartment. Whiskers played the role of local monster. He strutted into the hallway, took one look at Nancy like she was a cosmic mistake, and announced, "Mr." "Oh, Linda, what a small little place you've got here," Nancy sighed, trying to fit herself on the chair between the fridge and the table. "I'm just not used to this kind of coziness." Mom put tea and cookies in front of her. "Sorry, it's nothing fancy. If we'd known ahead of time you were coming to meet us, I'd have made something nicer," Mom said. "Oh, I have my own food at home," Nancy waved her off. "I always keep pies, chocolate, dried fruit, just in case someone drops by." "Well, we don't really have that," Mom answered calmly. "We're not big on sweets." Megan sat by the window, quietly observing. Later, she whispered to me, "A daughter-in-law isn't a person. She's a project." She wasn't wrong. That evening, Nancy had plenty of time to rehearse her favorite highlights reel, her ex-husband the jerk, whom she took to the cleaners in court, how she single-handedly raised Mark, how kids who grow up without a father turn out independent, sure, but they know they can't really count on anyone. Long look at me, and how her boy was used to cleanliness and order. I smiled politely. Mom smiled politely. Whiskers philosophically napped on the windowsill. Megan rolled her eyes so loud I could hear it. That night, Nancy still didn't know I could tolerate a lot. For a very long time. The condo, that's where Nancy played her main card. Mark and I rented a small 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood at first. Then the company bumped his salary, and we started talking about buying our own place. I was over the moon. Our own little home. Our walls. No neighbors upstairs skateboarding on the ceiling at 3 a.m. We found a nice 2-bedroom condo. The math was simple. 2 solid incomes, split the mortgage, knock it out in 15 years. Then Nancy said, "Stop." "Have you completely lost your mind?" She was hissing in Mark's room, assuming I couldn't hear. "You're going to shackle yourself to a mortgage and then this." She paused, searching for a word more polite than what she wanted to say. "This girl will walk off with half." "Mom, she's not planning to walk off," Mark said quietly. "Mothers who actually care think ahead, Mark. The condo is going in your name only. If she wants to help pay, great. But on paper, it's you. I know you. You're soft.
They'll spin you that story about joint property, and you'll be the one standing on the curb with a suitcase.
Guess what ended up on paper? Everything was in Mark's name. I signed a mountain of documents at the bank, but in the owner box, the co-owner box, no Vicky.
It's just paperwork, Mark told me.
Why does it matter whose name is on it? We're a family. The good girl in me said, he's right. We're a family. It doesn't matter. The practical girl in me cried quietly and did the math. I kept paying half the mortgage every month. Nancy kept reminding me that with nothing to your name, it wasn't smart to get too mouthy. Then the inspections started. Out of pure kindness, Mark gave his mom a second set of keys, just in case. From that day on, the case came up regularly. I'd come home from work, open the door, and there'd be Nancy in the hallway, shoes off this time. We do take our shoes off in our place, thank you very much, with a rag in her hand and a look like she'd walked in on a crime scene. I just came to see how you're managing without Mark, she'd say. She'd open closets, run her finger along the shelves, check the fridge. This is unsanitary, she'd conclude. You've got all the time in the world to keep house, and Mark is the one working. I work full-time too, Nancy, I'd remind her, and I don't make much less than Mark. We split the mortgage 50-50.
Oh, please,
she'd scoff. You grew up crammed in some tiny apartment with your mom, your sister, and your grandma. No savings, no lake cabin, nothing. You're a scrappy one, Vicky, but this condo is Mark's, and that's that. Don't get your hopes up about walking off with half. Mark, meanwhile, would sit at his laptop pretending to be very absorbed in the news. When I finally lost it and laid all of this out for him, he said,
You're smarter than this, Vicky. You know it's just the quirks of a lonely older woman. Couldn't you just be nicer? She's my mom.
She's his mom, is the universal argument they use to hammer nails into your boundaries. At work, I had my own little therapy circle. Marissa from marketing, for example, listened to my stories and said, You know, my mother-in-law is the total opposite of your Nancy. We go to yoga together on Sundays. Sometimes I forget which one's my actual mom. Hearing that hurt, honestly, but it was useful. It helped me understand. The problem isn't all mothers-in-law. The problem is this one. Lauren from accounting, on the other hand, was convinced that mothers-in-law are basically cavities in your marriage. My Miles a skunk too, she'd tell me. I blocked her everywhere. If my husband wants to talk to her, that's his business, but I'm out. I'd listen and think, these women are brave. And me? I'm still clinging to the idea that if I'm polite enough, things will get better. Spoiler, they won't. Every year, our company threw a birthday party for itself. Cake, music, cheap champagne, managers pretending to make heartfelt speeches, people drifting off to dance or take selfies. I decided to stay a little late this time. Mark had flown to another state on a business trip. I knew exactly when his flight landed and even texted him on my way home. All good, love you, talk later. Just make sure your MIL doesn't drop by to check on you. Lauren winked. She won't, I said confidently. She never comes if Mark's not there. She needs an audience for my laziness and incompetence. I was wrong. When I got home, Nancy was already in the entryway, arms crossed, prosecutorial face locked in. Good evening, Nancy, I said, hanging up my coat. Something wrong? Did Mark forget to tell you he's traveling? Oh, he told me, she said. That's why I came to see how you're coping without him. She swept her eyes over me. Party, huh? Had fun dancing? Yeah. It was a company party, I said, heading to the kitchen to pour myself some water. It went fine. Maybe Mark is naive enough to believe your stories about company parties, she said to my back. But I'm not stupid. Forever young, forever drunk. And the house is a mess. She opened the fridge. You've got nothing here except this watery soup that looks like slop. For some reason, the soup comment didn't hurt me. It just struck me as funny. So you've already done your inspection, I said. Without the homeowner present? The homeowner doesn't mind, Nancy sniffed. Speaking of the homeowner, don't get any ideas, Vicky. The condo's still only his. That night, for the first time, I let myself say it out loud. Nancy, this is our life and our budget. I answer your questions out of politeness, not obligation. If we couldn't be friends, fine. But the bare minimum is respect. I just want to live quietly with my husband. Do you really not believe someone could love your son just because she loves him, not because of square footage? She flushed. You should watch your mouth. You have nothing to your name and a lot of opinions. Your mom, your sister, your old grandma, all crammed into that little apartment. I didn't argue. I went to take a shower. Whether I cried in there or not is beside the point. A couple of days later, on Saturday, Mark called me from his trip. Did you make up with Mom? He asked. You apologize? For what? I honestly didn't understand. I didn't fight with her. I thought you were smarter than that, he said, and hung up. He didn't call again, just texted me his flight info. I went to the grocery store, bought food, made his favorite mushroom soup, baked a small pie. At the office, our CFO Tracy let me leave early. Go, go. It's not closing week. We'll survive without you. I was expecting a family dinner. Instead, I got Nancy's renovation show, and that's when I left, quietly. The divorce in our state took less time than a single mortgage payment. Uncontested divorce. That's what they call it. No kids, no property fight. At the courthouse, the judge asked me, Are you sure you're not claiming any interest in the condo, ma'am? Or is it Miss now? I'm sure, I said. My lawyer shook his head for days after. This is dumb, he told me. You've been paying half the mortgage for 3 years, Vicky. Best case right now, you walk out with a duffel bag when you could walk out with half the equity. I just want to leave, I repeated. Without a war. I rented a room in a cramped 2-bedroom near work. My coworker from sales, who was my roommate, hosted noisy get-togethers on weekends, but I spent most of my free time at Mom's anyway, sitting in her kitchen, drinking tea with Linda, watching Grandma Gail put on music and dance her swing routines while whiskers glared from the couch. Mom's tight little place was still the only place that felt like home. Mark stayed in the condo. From the few updates that filtered back to me, Nancy was still building her version of perfection over there. I thought about them less and less. One day, I realized I hadn't replayed a single Nancy line in my head for a whole week. It felt weird, like finally pulling out a splinter you'd gotten used to. That was about the time someone walked into my life I wasn't expecting at all. One evening, Mom said, Vicky, come by early tonight. We have company. I walked in and saw a man standing in the doorway, early 60s, nice, simple blazer, flowers in his hand, for Mom. He stopped on the threshold like he wasn't sure he was allowed inside. I stopped too. Then we both smiled at the same time, because it was suddenly very obvious who he was. You must be Vicky, he said quietly. And you must be Brian, I said, just as quietly. Sometimes you see someone for the first time, and it feels like you've known them a long time. That's happened to me exactly twice, with my father and with the man who later became my husband. But we're not up to him yet. Brian had flown in from Chicago. His wife had died a year earlier. He'd spent months working up the nerve for this visit, caught between what if Linda has forgotten me and what if she hasn't. I was an idiot, Linda, he said over dinner. I can't undo that, but I can at least stop acting like one now. Mom listened calmly. That's her way. She has this talent for refusing to turn life into a soap opera. She'd found the strength not to turn this visit into a 3-season drama. He didn't beg me to forgive him. He didn't drown me in excuses. He just told me about his life, how he tried to be a decent husband in his second marriage, How he still remembered that one-bedroom apartment with young Linda and 2 little girls. A month after that visit, Brian did something I absolutely wasn't expecting.
"This isn't for you, it's for me,"
he said, handing me a folder of documents. "I bought a small condo in Chicago years ago as a rental. I put it in your name, and here's an account with some money. Call it compensation for the past." We went to Chicago together to sign everything. I saw the city for the first time in my life, a place that had only ever existed for me in news clips and movies. High-rises, the lake, wind that cuts through your coat, cafes on every corner, people who didn't fit into any of my old us-them categories from high school. I flew back a different person. Not because I technically owned some square footage in Chicago, because for the first time I had backup, a safety net that was mine. Not Mark's, not Nancy's. Mine. Nick came into my life as a side effect of other people's business dealings. He was Brian's colleague and partner, tall, calm, with that stable kind of good mood you don't see often. We met one of those days when I was tagging along with my dad to banks and notary offices. A couple months later, Brian and Nick started flying in together on some weekends. Brian, to see Mom. Nick, just tagging along. Megan, of course, immediately said, "I feel like we're in a rom-com. Just, please, no ring and dessert. I hate that." Nick did not propose in a dessert. He did it one evening when we were walking along the lake in Chicago, talking about how ridiculous it was that grown adults still live out other people's scripts. "Do you really want to marry another American boy with a mother-in-law attached?" he asked. "If we could skip the mother-in-law part, why not?" I said. "I check out a guy's mom now like it's his credit score." "My mom lives in Florida and teaches yoga for seniors," he said. "She's going to love you. But we'll live separately. I'm saying this up front, as someone who also knows what she's his mom feels like." He didn't look at me like I was some good girl who would endure anything. He looked at me like an adult who could build a life with him on different terms. I said yes, and it was right in that stretch. When I already had a one-way ticket to Chicago and my resignation letter was sitting on Tracy's desk, that my doorbell rang. I was mopping the floor. My roommate had gone to visit her parents, and I decided to clean before the move. I wasn't expecting anyone. Nancy was on my doorstep, holding the same kind of pie she'd once bragged about. Always have one ready, in case someone drops by. "Good evening, Vicky," she said softly, not in her usual voice. "Please, don't kick me out right away. Do you have a few minutes?" I was so stunned I just stepped aside. "Come in." We walked to the kitchen. She set the pie down on the table, very carefully, like it was a peace treaty. Nancy suddenly looked lost. "I brought you some pie. You said once my cabbage one is good." She was almost the same woman, but it looked like someone had peeled a layer of paint off her. The wrinkles were deeper, the shoulders slumped, her eyes tired. "Thanks," I said. "Tea?" "No, I mean, yes. I don't know. I'm nervous." She sat, folded her hands in her lap, and blurted out, "I came to ask for your forgiveness. Vicky, please forgive me. It's my fault you two split." I poured her tea in silence. The phrase, "it's my fault you split," rubbed me the wrong way. When you're talking about grown adults, there are at least 2 people in the equation. "I don't hold anything against you, Nancy," I said honestly. "And I stopped thinking about you a long time ago. If 2 people don't want to get divorced, no one can make them." "Oh, you'd be surprised," she sighed. "I've been messing with people's heads my whole life. Mine, my son's, yours. All from the best intentions, of course. I complained about you to him nonstop, worked him up. And he's soft. He listened to his stupid mother and left the woman he..." She exhaled. "The woman he still loves." I didn't have time to react. "He still loves you, Vicky," she rushed on. I'm his mother. I see it. He thinks about you every day. But he's ashamed. Men don't know how to ask for forgiveness. He's scared to call. Before and after the divorce, there wasn't a single hint he regretted anything, I said calmly. So hearing this now is surprising. I'm asking you as a mother, she said, folding her hands tighter. If you can, forgive him. I'll go to him right now and say, your wife forgave you. She's ready to come back, start over. Nancy, I raised a hand. Let's be clear. Forgiving and going back are two different things. I forgave Mark a long time ago. I forgave myself too, if we're being honest. But I'm not coming back. We both made mistakes. I sincerely hope he finds his happiness, just not with me. She blinked at me for a couple seconds like a fish washed up on the beach. You're getting married? She finally managed. Yeah, I nodded. I met my person. He proposed. I'm quitting my job and moving to Chicago soon. I'll come visit Mom and Megan, but I'll live there. We sat in silence for a while. I actually got worried she might pass out right there in my kitchen, and I'd have to call 911. Water? I asked. No, she shook her head. I thought I still had time to fix everything. And I don't. She looked down at her hands. Mark's in trouble, Vicky. We're in trouble, she added, like that clarification mattered. He lost his job a while ago. He can't find anything that pays like his old one. The mortgage is killing him. The bank's going to take the condo soon. So that was the real reason she came. The forgiveness speech was just the preface. The main topic was, surprise, mortgage. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't offended either. By then, I knew exactly who Nancy was. You're here to ask for a loan? I asked. She lifted her eyes. They were full of all kinds of things at once. Pride, shame, fear, hope. Only if it's possible for you, she whispered. I know your father isn't a poor man. People talk. She trailed off. I would never come if it were just about me, but they're going to take Mark's home. It's all he has left. For the first time, I felt real pity for him, not as my ex or the guy who betrayed me, just as a gentle man who'd spent his life following his mother's script and was now paying for her choices. How much are you short to get current? I asked. We talked numbers. They weren't pretty, but they weren't catastrophic either. Not for someone who suddenly had a condo in Chicago and an account in her own name. I can lend him the money, I said, but not as some friendly favor. We'll go to a notary, draw up a proper promissory note, a monthly payment schedule. This won't be a gift, Nancy. It'll be a deal between adults. She nodded. I could see how badly she wanted to say, come on, you loved him. Why the paperwork? But she bit it back. Thank you, Vicky, she whispered. You're a much better person than I am. No, I smiled. I'm just done playing the good girl. I'm an adult now. We really did meet later, the three of us, me, Mark, and Nancy, at a notary's office. Mark didn't lift his eyes once while he signed the papers. I didn't ask him to. Thank you, he said when we walked outside. Good luck, Mark, I answered. I hope one day you buy a place where you're the one making decisions in the kitchen, not somebody else. Nancy flinched at that, but didn't say a word, which for her was progress. I'm writing this now at the table in my tiny kitchen in Chicago. Outside the window, the city glows like a screensaver. On the fridge is our grocery list that Nick and I more or less stick to. On my phone, there's a video from Mom. Grandma Gail is dancing again. Whiskers is squinting in disapproval on the couch. Megan's dropping sarcastic comments in the chat. Sometimes I think about Nancy. The last update I got about her was through Mom. Mark sold his car, changed jobs, and he's slowly paying off that note. Nancy doesn't brag anymore about how she cleaned out her ex in court. I think she's starting to understand what it feels like when the consequences of your decisions catch up with your kid years later. I don't know if she'll really change. Maybe. Maybe not. Not my problem. My job that night in the kitchen was simple. Not to hand her the jar of screws, but finally pick up my bag and leave. Everything else turned out surprisingly doable. Thank you so much for watching. If this story spoke to you, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. I read them all. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.